Welcome to Tampa Home Talk with your host, native Tampa real estate girl, Katrina Madewell, a full-time, passionate, out-of-the-box thinker, love for home ownership kind of realtor with over 21 years of combined mortgage and real estate experience. Tune in every week at this time for expert advice on everything you need to know about home ownership, finance, maintaining great credit, building wealth, and making your everyday life better, and how you can be financially successful today and tomorrow. Remember, love where you live or let Katrina fix it. Now, here's your host of Tampa Home Talk, Katrina Madewell.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tampa Home Talk. This is your host, Katrina Madewell. You're listening to us on the Real Estate Radio Network. You can catch us here every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. We have a fabulous guest lined up for you today, and so we will be happy to take your tree questions. I want to leave you the studio call-in line in case you have some questions for our arborist today, 727-441-3000. I'll repeat that number in just a minute. So Tom Hall with H&H Environment Services is our guest today. Fabulous arborist. I think I've learned more about trees in the last 15 minutes than I knew in my whole life. So the call-in number for our arborist, 727-441-3000. 727-441-3000. Our arborist would love to answer your questions. So, welcome.
Welcome.
You had a lot of fun playing around with us today, didn't you, before the show?
Yes, I'm getting to learn the radio business, and it's a lot of work.
You liked all the bells and whistles, huh?
Yes, the little NASA geek in me came out when you had that many bells and whistles.
I tell you, it was crazy because we walked outside the studio today before the show started, and we were looking around, and he says, "Hey, do you see that tree right there?" And I'm going to have to let you repeat all the lingo. But it was interesting because I never, ever would have noticed about, there was green on it. There were some brown branches, which you just see. You don't pay any attention to that kind of stuff. But the tree was actually dying, and there was mistletoe up there, and I had to walk up there to actually see it was mistletoe. So talking, that's your lingo. And I'll have you break it down and keep it simple, but
I'll try to do the old KISS principle and keep it simple, stupid. What I was doing is looking at the base of the tree, which you look at the root flare to see how strong the tree is, and it does have a good root system. The second thing you want to do is look at the trunk structure. Is it well tapered, just straight up and down, or is it a multi-stemmed tree, which this was?
So let's explain that and make it kind of visual. So you talk about multi-stem. Let's break that down and explain to somebody that's not, because they're listening to us. Okay. They can't see it like I did.
Well, when you're thinking multi-stem, you're thinking it has lots of limbs and branches. It's not just a straight trunk that grows up that has the limbs and branches. It looks to have multiple heads, I guess is the only way to explain it. And when you look at a tree, if you just casually look, you'll see it. It'll look green. But if you really take the time to really look at the tips of that tree, the tips of the tree had what we call dieback. And that's when the leaves of the tree were completely empty at the very tips of the tree. As you know, with any tree... So
you're looking at it, there's a little prickly branch, like it's wintertime. There's no leaves at all. It looks dead.
Yes, correct. And as you see in the dieback, then I was looking and I saw green patches, but the green patches weren't leaves. The green patches was mistletoe.
Which is crazy. And so I learned something new today about mistletoe.
Yes.
It's not only for kissing at Christmas time.
That's correct. It's not only good for getting kisses, but it's really bad for trees. Mistletoe is a fungus, and actually it's a fungus that actually weakens the wood of the tree, which they call xylem. So it makes the tree much weaker and makes it more likely for have a limb to have a failure.
So mistletoe is a fungus. Does it have a purpose? Or is it just a fungus?
It's just a fungus. It's just a fungus. I guess its purpose is to eat wood, and so that's what it does.
Like termites, they eat wood.
Yes, exactly. And also, with that, the tree had other funguses. It had some brown fungus, but it also had Ganoderma. And basically all Ganoderma means is it had mushrooms growing out of it.
So we've all seen those little mushrooms on the tree, like growing from one of the stems or the limbs and even on the base, the trunk part of the tree.
The trunk part of the tree. If you have, when you have Ganoderma growing in the trunk of the tree, they call that buttress root rot, which basically means if it's in the root flare, the roots are dying. So the roots are rotting away. And if you really look at an oak and you ever seen one turned over and all the films you see on TV from hurricanes, and you look at these giant trees, the root base of most oaks is only 18 inches deep. And that's because the trees can only breathe up to 18 inches deep.
That is so profound. I want you to repeat it again because we are in hurricane season. And just for the person listening, if they're kind of and they're like, dozing out a little bit because it's talk radio, just repeat that because I want them to catch that.
The root mass, the deepest it'll be for most 99.9% of the oaks is 18 inches.
So that's a little bit longer than a ruler.
Yes. And what happens is a lot of people love to put planter beds around big oaks, and they fill it in with dirt and put all these flowers around it because the roots are growing. And what they basically did was took a nice giant pillow and put it over the roots of the tree, and they're suffocating it. So if you did have a beautiful tree and then you built this nice planter bed around the oak and put all this extra dirt in, and now it's looking a little bit peaked, well, you're suffocating it.
What? I never even thought about that. And the last house that we were at, we did have this huge oak tree. Yes. And this oak tree, we actually had those retaining wall stones all the way around it in a circle. And we did plant a flower bed in there. Our house now doesn't have that, but it's just interesting.
When you do that, you just have to make sure you don't put any more dirt in. You could put those and try to create a nice flower bed, but if you put dirt, extra dirt in, what you're going to end up doing is actually having the roots not be able to breathe, and then they die, and then the tree falls over.
So, you're an arborist, so I'm sure you're familiar with the plant. I just might not have it right because we have all these crazy nicknames in my family for plants. It's not really the real name. But that same tree had a night blooming cereus, like a cactus, and it would bloom this white flower at night. It was gorgeous. Wow. But I was just curious if it had any impact on the tree or if it bothered it. They're kind of they seem like they're air cactuses almost. They climb.
Well, air plants don't really bother trees. And there's some misconceptions out there. Moss by itself, moss does not damage the tree because moss
that's a great one.
It's not a parasite.
I tell you, Tom, our northern clients that we get that come here from other states, like other northern states, they don't have that Spanish moss, the gray stuff that's just hanging from the trees. And they look at it and they go, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like gone with the wind. Look at all that moss. So I'm glad that you're talking about the Spanish moss because I get this question and this type of stuff all the time. So let's talk about that Spanish moss and how it affects the tree.
Well, Spanish moss doesn't affect the tree because it's an air plant. It just is there. And it doesn't take nutrients from the tree. But what happens is Spanish moss, when you get a lot of it, is weighty when it's wet. So when you have a tree that has been built by God for so many pounds it can take, and then all this Spanish moss gets on and gets wet, it puts too much weight on the structure and the tree breaks apart. Because with a tree, it's not about if it's green or not. It's about structure. The structure of the tree will determine how safe it is in whatever particular environment it is. So if you have it right over your home or children's play area, the safer, it's not going to be as safe when you have that much moss on it because the moss can get heavy and cause limbs to break.
So that's the main thing is the extra weight that it causes, and then when it's wet, it probably quadruples that rate.
Yes, it does.
Weight.
Live oaks weigh approximately 62 pounds for every square foot of wood. So 1 by 1 by 1 is 62 pounds.
Wow.
A water oak or a laurel oak is 52 to 54 pounds for every square foot of wood. So when you take that dry, it rains heavy for 4 or 5 days, that weight doubles, and then the weight from the moss is now quadrupled in its weight. Now you have, instances where you have what they call lead failures. When you see on TV, they say the tree fell in the house. Normally you look and you see the tree still standing. It's just a big giant limb. That limb is called a lead, L-E-A-D. So it just causes a lead failure. It gets too much weight for it. It's too long, and long means heavy. Heavy, moss, weight, water, breaks. Mm-hmm. So you always want to, when you prune a tree correctly, you have to take weight off the tree, not just take the green leaves off. A guy runs around the tree real quick and go, wow, that looks great. 2 months later, did they do anything? Well, they didn't take any weight off the tree. And for hurricane season, you want to prune the tree to remove weight off the tree to make it safer. But you also want to prune it correctly because you have to keep a tree balanced for the same reason we just talked about.
Right.
Root system's only 18 inches deep, If you take all the weight off one side, well, likelihood of it going the other way because it has no weight, no root structure to support it is, very, very probable.
So people think probably, and it would seem like it would make sense, but it's just not so from what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You're cutting one whole side of the tree, and so the tree's just, growing to the left or whichever direction. So at this point, you're looking at it going, oh, yeah, it's going to go this way. But you're saying the one with no limbs is actually weaker because you're killing the root system.
Yeah, once you take those the weight off this one side, you're making those 18 inches deep roots try to keep that tree in the ground when it's wet. And since all the weight is going one way, it's just going to pull right out of the ground, and that's when you have your trees topple over doing storms because they're unbalanced.
It's amazing. We were outside looking at the trees, and this is from somebody that's not an arborist, that doesn't know near what I couldn't even probably tell you what kind of oak tree it is, right? But it's interesting because a few of the things you pointed out, I noticed that there's differences in the tree. Like you see little dark lines, like I think you mentioned where it had been cut or where it had been split.
Yes, when you have a tree growing, some trees, especially the ones that we're talking about, especially your laurels and water oaks, when you're looking at them, jacarandas, they have a lot of what they call co-dominant attachments. And all a co-dominant attachment is if you put a handshake to your mother or father, you have two different DNAs, and the handshake is the attachment the tree has. It's not one piece of wood. It's multiple pieces of wood growing together.
Right.
So when you have a handshake holding up a limb that gets a lot of water in it, the handshake, if there's rot or decay or mistletoe or any of the funguses, makes that handshake weaker. That's when you have limbs breaking and falling.
And we're going to talk some more about decay and the ants that we saw on the tree. We're going to talk about tree houses and a whole bunch of stuff that homeowners are going to want to talk about. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. We're going to dive into our Credit Crunch segment next. And we have joining us Lori Zook, hosts a show here also at Tan Talk at 11 p.m. tonight on Thursdays. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Katrina.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I want to call in and give a little tip today, if that's okay.
Thank you. What's your credit tip of the day?
Sure. Well, a lot of times clients come to me and they have judgments on their credit reports, and they think they're going to get into a house without paying the judgment, but we know that that's not true.
Oh, no.
However, but a lot of times, depending upon who the creditor was that, issued the judgment against them, sometimes they are negotiable, but the key thing is to satisfy that judgment, whether it's negotiated or paid in full. But a lot of times people actually have satisfied it, but unfortunately the court did not record it, and it's not in the computer. And they think that disputing it with the credit bureaus is going to do something, but it's not, because if the court didn't put it into the computer, when the credit bureaus go out each day, they're just looking at what's in the computer. So my tip is, if you have satisfied a judgment, it's very important that you hold on to that piece of paper forever, even if you scan it into your computer, because then you have proof that you've actually paid it, and then the credit bureaus will be forced with that proof to actually correct it.
Absolutely. Save that type of stuff in Dropbox and Shoebox, somewhere where you can find it.
Right. Well, what I usually do is I try and scan everything, and I'm going to give you one more tip today, too. We're talking about public records. Well, if you've had a bankruptcy, a key thing is a few months after the bankruptcy is to pull your own credit reports and look and see were all of the credit lines actually included in that bankruptcy.
Wow, that is a fabulous tip.
Yeah, it's so often that I see that when the client is given a sheet from the attorney of all the accounts they put into bankruptcy, they need to compare the information on that sheet, that creditor list, against what's on their credit report. And that way they can see if it matches up. And if it doesn't, now they have proof that they can go back to the credit bureaus with or to the creditor with and say, hey, wait a minute, there's a mistake in my report and you need to correct it.
Awesome tip of the day. I know we see all kinds of crazy stuff. I have a guy, actually, Lori, I'm going to connect you with, that's one of our clients, and awesome police officer, so Lord knows he serves our community. We definitely have to give back to those people. So
Right.
real quick, because I know your show comes up on Thursday night, and we're probably going to re-show this. We're going to re-air our same show Saturday. But who's your guest that you have on tonight at 11?
Oh, I have a great guest on because we're talking about title. So I have Joellen Robles from Hillsborough Title, and she'll be my guest tonight from 11 to 12. So I hope your listeners will tune in.
Fabulous. Hillsborough Title is one of our show partners, so we already have Aaron Davis's spots. You might want them for your show.
Yeah, I might have to have him next. Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll be back in just a minute. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk on the Real Estate Radio Network. Be back in just a minute.
Hillsborough Title. Hillsborough Title is a local, family-owned title agency here in Tampa Bay. Our service, strength, and knowledge make us different. We've served Tampa Bay area for over 30 years. From Polk County to the Gulf, Pasco to Manatee, Tampa Bay, we've got you covered. Call us at 813-712-8888 or visit us on the web at thebesttitle.com. That's thebesttitle.com.
My name's Carol Austin, representing the Realtors Care Foundation, GTAR. I'm the CEO there, and the foundation is existing to help with down payment assistance, and we gift up to $5,000 for the first-time home buyers to purchase a home in Hillsborough County. So please visit us at the Realtors Care of GTAR.org or call us at 813-879-7010. 813-879-7010.
Hi, I'm Katrina Madewell, host of Tampa Home Talk, right here on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Weekly, I'm going to give you market-appropriate, timely information regarding homeownership matters because we want to make your everyday life better. Wherever you are in life, it's our mission to bring you good advice so you can maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. My team and I are passionate about it. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Tampa Home Talk on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Welcome back. This is your host, Katrina Madewell on the Real Estate Radio Network, and you are listening to us on Tampa Home Talk. If you want to catch us on our off-air number, you can call or text us at 813-377-2775. We're happy to answer your questions. If we have any of our guests on that you weren't able to catch and you're listening to our show later via a podcast, which is, we're also on Facebook and Twitter across the web. Just search for Tampa Home Talk. All of our podcasts are there. We're happy to get those questions answered and reconnect you with any of our guests. Again, our off-air number, you can call or text 813-377-2775. We're back in studio today with Tom Hall, H&H Environmental Service. If you missed the first part of our show, we talked all about that beautiful Spanish moss that's on trees. We talked about how to tell if your tree is dying. And we've got a bunch more tips. And we were just discussing about how some of the trees, even on the way here that we were looking at outside, you can look at them and see different things. And I heard you share a story before the show started as well about someone else with liability. So you can dive into that whenever you're ready, because I know you talked about the county scale and all that stuff. So for the homeowners, which, you know, a lot of agents I know listen to my show, a lot of my homeowners and past clients listen to the show. What's some of the things they should know about their trees?
Well, when it comes to your trees, you are responsible for your trees. So some of the county statutes are a little bit different, but in general, over sidewalks, you should have your tree trimmed to at least 11 feet over the sidewalks. As you know, when the trees get wet from rain, the limbs drop, and then if the wind blows them and hits somebody in the face, you would be liable if that happens. So try to keep to the county or city statute of about 11 feet over your sidewalks. Same thing over your drive. Limbs lower, winds can blow them. And, you know, if somebody's in your driveway and they get hit in the face with a limb or something, you could be liable. So, you know, you still want to discuss that with your attorney if something like that happens, but you definitely want to do everything possible to prune them correctly to avoid that. One of the things I've learned, and I've done a lot of storm work, is the big insurance companies, you know, the big two here, Citizens and State Farm, the two of the big ones, when you have a tree that's too low over your roof, and they get wet, they lower, and they can move the shingles, may put a hole in your roof, damage, you get water intrusion. They're very big on that.
I was out yesterday actually showing a property, and it was a bank-owned property, and this tree was huge, which there's one more question I'm going to ask about that tree, but for what we're talking about right this second, the limb actually kind of dipped down. It was on the back part of the screen lanai, and it made almost like an elbow or between a V and a U shape, the limb did. Almost like it kind of, boom, hit the top of the roof and poked back up. And I was looking on the bottom side. I'm like, oh, surely there's a hole in the roof. And it's like leaking there because, it was literally on the lanai.
Normally you will have a hole in the roof because as soon as it gets wet and heavy, the limbs are going to lower. And when they lower and the wind starts blowing them, it's going to move especially your 3-tab type roofs, it'll, pick up the shingle.
Yes.
And then when it picks the shingle up, the limb will cut the underlayment or the little felt underneath, and then water gets in, and you start having water leaks. So you really want to maintain.
So I want to explain what you're talking about real quick. Hold your thought. He's talking about the different types of shingles on the top of a house, and this is a lot of things that we look at as agents as well. Now they do the 3-dimensional, which is like shingle, overlapping, kind of like, here's my hand, put your hand on top. Here's my hand, put your hand on top. So the new 3-dimensional shingles look kind of like that. The tab shingles are the ones that just touch each other, kind of like a piece of tile with some grout in between. So those are the ones you're talking about, and those are weaker. It's a weaker roof system.
Yes, and even the dimensionals can be rubbed and put a hole in your roof. And what the insurance companies normally do about this time, and I've had this happen in the past, I get a phone call and they say, I just got a call or a letter from so and so. They're telling me I have 10 days to get this tree trimmed off my roof at least 6 feet, or they're going to cancel my insurance. Normally, even if you're the quickest you can be with the way the storms are coming, before a tree company can get out there and get it trimmed in that time frame, take the pictures, send the receipts and everything to the insurance company. By all that time, the 10 days has lapsed. So now you don't have insurance during the storm season. And they normally won't give it back to you until after. So it's better to be a little proactive than reactive.
And the crazy part is, too, like State Farm, I know you mentioned them, but they don't even insure homes anymore. Like, they outsource all of it to Citizens and other places.
Yes. And they're very picky about trees. The other thing, too, is they ask you, was it known that this tree was dangerous? And if it was known that the tree was dangerous and you hadn't done anything, you could be liable, even if it falls and hits your neighbor's home or car. You could be liable. So you have to make sure.
Talk about some of those hazards, because I know there were a lot of them when you and I talked before the show with tree hazards in general. Like, somebody might be saying, well, I didn't know my tree was dangerous, or I didn't know it was hazardous.
Well, the things we looked at, the mistletoe, the dieback where the tips of the tree doesn't have any leaves. It just has sticks, like it was during the winter, and it was
summer.
It was summer. It was sleeping, and this is during the summer. Looking for brown spots or swollen spots or a bunch of insects crawling on your trees, which they shouldn't be. When you have a lot of insects in between the attachments of the tree, you normally have some type of problem there. So I would always recommend get your tree professional out to look at it and really explain to you what they're seeing, so that if there's something there that could be iffy, where it could do damage to your neighbor's property or your own, that you'll be more proactive so that you don't get those questions from a company like Citizens that you should have known this because this has a lot of rot. You see all these mushrooms here. You're telling me you didn't think there was a problem. So I do recommend that everybody goes out and inspect your trees at least once every 3 months. Just kind of walk and look at them while you're taking a nice stroll.
So the one that we saw out front that we were looking at actually had ants not only crawling on it, but in it.
Yes.
So if we were to pull that bark back and have a look at that tree, what would we see?
You would probably see major cavities. You would definitely see a lot of rot. And when you have rot in cavities, you have weak spots. And when you have a big tree and weak spots, well, we know we're going to have a problem. We just don't know when. And I tell everybody, I don't know when this tree is going to come down, but I can tell you it is. And when you're in since the tree is here in the urban environment, not in the middle of a farm or somewhere where it could just fall and hit the ground, you have to be a little more diligent with your tree practices when you're in an urban environment or is very close to a neighbor's home.
It makes sense. So going back to the other house that was touching the roof that I showed, the base of that tree was huge. And so anybody that has ever had this issue knows exactly what I'm talking about. But those roots start climbing, especially if they're planted too close to the house, right? Like they did back in the day. They would plant a house right by the tree for the shade, right?
Yes, they would.
But what they didn't realize is that those roots are actually growing under the house. They're getting into your plumbing. They can get into your septic system. We see that stuff a lot. So let's talk about that scenario and some of the stuff that you see in the field, like, and requirements, because you have to have a permit to take that tree out.
Yes, you have to have a permit. And if you what they call root prune or cutting the roots, if you overdo that, you can also make the tree weak to make it more dangerous to fall. So you really want to be careful of how much roots you trim back or where you cut them. But if a tree is too close to a home, and I think in Hillsborough County it's 18 inches, if it's within that, you can automatically take it out. Some places it's 3 to 6 feet because it's just too close to the home, and you will have problems with cracking a foundation. Normally with your live oaks, though, the roots are going down more. Where your laurels and waters, the roots are more, surface. And so you tend to have more problems with them, with cracking of sidewalks, foundations, septic tanks, or, especially your ficus trees. They love your water systems. So people plant ficuses close to a pool, close to your septic. You're going to have broken
pipes and that kind of stuff.
Everything.
So how does a layperson like me tell the difference between a laurel oak and a live oak or a grand oak? Can we, or is that an arborist question?
Well, actually, you can. The difference is in the bark. A live oak bark is really rough. So like rough skin like an alligator. It's got the really rough bumps all over it. Where a laurel oak is more slick. It's more sleek. Normally kind of grayish looking color when they can be. Your water oaks and your laurels are in the same. Your turkey oaks are real easy because the leaves look like turkey foot. So those are really kind of simple to find. And
your background is super interesting. I find it amazing because I know that you said you kind of stumbled into it. But an arborist is like a tree doctor. That was analogy, and I thought that's so perfect. You're the tree doctor. So talk about just real quick, how did you your background? Because you have a financial background.
Yes.
And now you're an arborist. So just share on that, because you come from that side where you understand a little bit more about liability than maybe the normal arborist might.
Well, my background is very financial. I started off at Merrill Lynch. And I went from Merrill Lynch to Dun & Bradstreet. So my background is more in the financial services, stocks, bonds, business credit, those types of things. So everything I learned was risk assessment, risk. Especially at Merrill, they didn't like any risk. So, always worrying about risk. And now I happened to bump into a friend who needed some help with his business. And as I was working with him with his business, it happened to be tree service. I went out with him one day, and it was just wonderful. I love trees. I love grass. So I was able to, get out, walk around, and not be in an office. And it was really... You were at peace. Yes, it was very nice. And I just got involved with it. And after 5 or 6 years, I studied and took the arborist exam, passed it. And the arborist exam is exceedingly hard. So
yeah, that's what I was saying. Talk about your credentials, because, the arborist exam is a lot longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it's a very hard test to take, and it includes not only studying the types of trees, the risk of trees, the evaluation of trees. It also has you have to study the diseases of the trees. And one of the things it does is ask you about different knots when you're bringing down a tree. What's the safest way to do it? So I've taken the Series 7, 6, 63. I've had all those licenses, my annuities, and I'm going to tell you, it's probably the toughest test I've ever taken.
That's something.
Isn't that crazy?
And so your affiliations, you're affiliated with an international group.
Yes, it's the International Society of Arbiters, so ISA. I'm also with the commercial, arboriculture, and then they also have, there's different factions underneath it, just like you with the real estate. But the main key is whoever comes out and looks at your tree, make sure they're trained in the field so that they can give you the proper information so you can make a better decision. For me, I like to educate the person so they understand their trees. These are your trees that bring value to your property. So whoever's talking to you shouldn't be talking down to you. They should be explaining to you what you're seeing so that when you're out, walking the dog or just walking around with family, you look up and see something that you know is not exactly right. You can then make the phone call to get somebody else to come and look at it and maybe, dissuade you where it's not a problem, or say, yeah, we have a problem, but what do we do to fix it? And if you really understand the structure of the trees, it really makes a big difference in pruning. Because if you prune it correctly, it's not as expensive as you take. As people think. It's when you do it wrong that you cause more problems that it gets expensive.
That makes sense. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk, our studio call-in line. In case you have questions for our guest today, 727-441-3000. Again, you can call in and speak to Tom Hall today, 727-441-3000. This is your host, Katrina Madewell, on Tampa Home Talk. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a minute, and catch us here every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. We'll be back in a minute.
My name's Carol Austin, representing the Realtors Care Foundation, GTAR. I'm the CEO there, and the foundation is existing to help with down payment assistance, and we gift up to $5,000 for the first-time home buyers to purchase a home in Hillsborough County. So please visit us at the Realtors Care of GTAR.org or call us at 813-879-7010. 813-879-7010.
Hi, I'm Katrina Madewell, host of Tampa Home Talk, right here on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Weekly, I'm going to give you market-appropriate, timely information regarding homeownership matters, because we want to make your everyday life better. Wherever you are in life, it's our mission to bring you good advice so you can maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. My team and I are passionate about it. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Tampa Home Talk on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m.
Hi, this is Aaron Davis, owner of Hillsborough Title. Hillsborough Title is a local, family-owned title agency here in Tampa Bay. Our service, strength, and knowledge make us different. We've served Tampa Bay area for over 30 years. From Polk County to the Gulf, Pasco to Manatee, Tampa Bay, we've got you covered. Call us at 813-712-8888 or visit us on the web at thebesttitle.com. That's thebesttitle.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk with our special guest today, Tom Hall with H&H Environmental Services. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, on the Real Estate Radio Network. I believe we have a call-in today for you. Welcome to the show. Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Okay, you were talking about home insurance, correct?
Well, yes, we had a guest on actually last week for insurance.
Okay, let me ask you. A lot of the banks and institutions have homeowner insurance. Now, this home insurance that you have, is that if somebody breaks into your house or something, that you have this home insurance that would protect you against theft?
You know, I'm glad that you asked that question. I'm not licensed to actually answer insurance questions, but I do know that homeowners insurance covers an array of that type of stuff, including if someone were to break in and rob you. I know there's different types of coverage as far as replacement and not, and that's a great question for our insurance partner to answer.
Is he in the studio with you today?
I had her actually in studio last week, and I'm happy to get your number off air and have her call you back and answer your questions.
Oh, that would be great. I'm in a hospital now, but basically, she could call me back. I just want to say this: homeowner insurance means that you have home insurance. That means in your home, something happens in the home to your home. Let's say there's a hurricane or something. Home insurance should protect any bad storm or anything like that. Home insurance should take care of every detail in your home. That would be from someone breaking in or somebody stealing something from you that would be taken care of. And your partner is licensed by the state of Florida to sell that kind of insurance. See? Now, does he sell any other type of insurance? This is life, accident.
Yeah, they have a bunch of insurance products out there. They also have a lot of private insurance carriers for flood and an array of products.
Well, term life is very good. It's very competitive. Now, I want to throw something at you very constructively.
Okay.
You ever hear of Colonial Penn? It is for people that are over 65 or they have programs. Now, other companies like MetLife and Prudential, they're all competitors, And health insurance is a very, very important thing in our society today as we talk about insurance. Obamacare is an excellent way of buying insurance. The people that
you would have made a great call in last week when our insurance gal was in studio, but we have our arborist in here today. Do you have any questions for him?
Oh yeah, is he in the studio?
He's live here with me today, so ask away if you got those tree questions. He can do it.
Okay, answer somebody. What is his name and what questions would he be nice enough to answer today?
Mr. Tom Hall is with H&H Environment Services, and he knows a lot about trees. I think I learned more in the first 15 minutes than I knew in my whole life.
Do you ever think you're selling insurance? You can make a fortune if you sell intangibles, especially for your show when you sell radio advertising. That's an intangible. But me being totally blind, I believe that we could sell every broken dollar down from every walk of life. There are a lot of people. You look at the colleges and you look at the disc jockey schools. Those are the people.
You got a tree question for me there, Getty?
Yeah.
What you got going on? What kind of arborist question you got today?
Well, my question today is, how do you get this homeowner insurance, and what competitors are selling the same thing? And why should I buy this guy's homeowner insurance as opposed to others?
I'll tell you what, hang tight, because I want to answer your question, but again, I'm not insurance licensed, so I can't do that. So I'm going to have my producer, Chris, grab your information off air, and then I'm going to have Paula Blanda call you back to answer your insurance question. Fair enough?
Sure. You have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for letting me call in.
Oh, thank you. Anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, that was great. I wish we had an arborist question. So if you want to know something about your tree, please call us, 727-441-3000. We'll be happy to have our arborist answer them today, 727-441-3000. So let's talk about where we left off. We were talking about liability and the ants in the tree and all of that fun stuff. And I know since, our show is Tampa Home Talk, we're going to talk about some of the things that I'm sure that my people that would be listening would want to hear, tree houses, just liability things, all of those type of things. We can come back to that towards a later part of the show, but okay. I know you brought a lot of fabulous information that you want to share too.
Well, one of the things I was looking at, and especially when you're looking at value to your home, is people buy palms, and especially coconut palms and canary date palms, Sylvester palms, which are more your top end, nicer palms for your landscape. And you just really need to pay attention to which ones you're getting, because there's a lot of disease.
Okay, so I have a question. No one's answered this yet. It's a palm tree question. Okay. How many different type of palms are they? And I'm sorry, palms are not trees,
They're
right?
Not
I
trees.
learned that. Okay.
Palms are not
That's
trees.
a habit. Palms. How many type of palms are there? Do you know?
Over 2,000.
Oh, wow, that many? I was thinking like 200.
Yes, over 2,000.
Okay, back to the palms.
So if you've got, with that many, nobody knows them all. So I've got a book that I carry, and pretty much every arborist I know carries a book, and they can flip through it and figure out which of your palm, because there's a lot of different types.
Are most of those palm species from this area or tropical climates, pretty much?
Most of them are imports. So they're invasives, but they're not an invasive bad species. They're not like an Australian pine or Brazilian pepper, which was brought here and now causing havoc to our environment. These are invasives, but they're not bad invasives. Just like oak trees. Not a lot of oak trees are, for this area, they're not the natural tree.
I think a lot of people don't think about that, but you raise a good point, because people are from other cultures, and I've had a lot of clients that bring all type of different fruits and trees and different stuff because they're from other countries. Yes. So what happens when you take a plant or a tree from another environment and you bring it to a new one? That's a
It's really according to what it is. Like Brazilian pepper has taken over, and even when you cut it down, if you chip it up and put it on the ground, it'll resprout. I mean, it's like almost impossible to kill. It's like the cockroach of trees. You really don't want them. Australian pine.
Do they
trees
serve a purpose? Like, is it a real pepper?
I think they serve a purpose just to make your life miserable.
Oh, as an arborist, right?
There's no good purpose to them.
But is it a pepper you can eat or no?
They say you can. I have never tried it, but I do know that what they really do is they tear up your home. They'll take over so quickly, and they really are very destructive.
We get this question actually a lot, especially in many of these deed-restricted communities.
Yes.
And a lot of them have a specific plant list. And if they don't have a specific plant list that you can have, they at least have an exclusion plant list. Yes. And they'll talk about some of those invasive type plants and trees and shrubs that just kind of take over.
Well, but they put a lot of them there. Carrot woods are not, those are Florida invasives.
So as you're naming some of these invasive plants, can you describe what they look like?
Ooh, now that would be hard.
That's tough.
That would be hard.
So we'll post those on our website at TampaHomeTalk.com and also on our Facebook and Twitter page at Tampa Home Talk. So have a look at those.
Actually, I gave it to you right here. It's in front of you. There's actually an invasive list as well as a non-invasive list on the paperwork that I brought here.
Oh, good. So we're definitely gonna post that at Tampa Home Talk.
Yes.
So have a look at that. And I know they're on there, but talk about some of these trees, why they're invasive. Like, is there any that are popular that people love that totally take over, which people don't realize until later while they're on that list?
Ladyfinger mimosa trees, the Chinese tallow trees, they're all Florida invasives, and they're Florida invasives on the bad side. Some invasives, but they don't really do any damage. But those are big trees. They grow very quickly, but they're very weak. They drop limbs a lot, lots of fruit, things that can hurt people. So, Florida doesn't really want them, the state planted. It's like mangroves. Mangroves serve a purpose, and that's why they're protected. So the mangrove trees, and there's 3 different types, whites, reds, blacks. And when the mangroves, you have to maintain them at a certain level. You have to actually be a certified mangrove pruner to touch them.
Really?
If they catch you trimming them without the proper licensing, it's huge fines.
So why are those protected? Do you know?
They hold the soil. They allow for, our wildlife and fowl to grow, especially fish, use them as protection.
You see them a lot in the water areas.
And mangroves are normally along your waterways, your more expensive properties. It's good to know the law. If they're already at a certain level, keep them pruned to that level. As long as you keep them at that level, you have no problems. If you let them grow and they get to certain heights, then you can never touch them. So if you have a beautiful waterway and you can see it, don't get lax and let it grow up, because once it gets to a certain level, you can't touch it.
Wow.
And so your waterway disappears.
Yes.
So for your properties along the water, it's very mind that you keep in mind of that.
Will affect your value for sure if you're in the water.
No water view is real bad when you live on the water.
We actually, when we come back for the last part of our show, we're going to talk a little bit more about trees and how they bring value to your home and just get into some of those details a little bit more. But we have an insurance tip of the day really quick from Paula Blanda. When we had her in studio last week, she left it for us, and I think it's very appropriate for today's show. Okay, so you guys know we're big Dave Ramsey fans. We're on the endorsed local provider list. So some of our clients will opt to self-insure. I know that Dave talks about self-insure. Paula, how does that affect people from a homeowner standpoint for our insurance tip of the day?
Sure, we've got a lot of folks that say, if my place burns down, I can rebuild it. I'm pretty well set now. But what do I do? What if the child in my neighborhood falls in my yard and the parents want to sue me? There is a liability-only policy. We have policies for you that are just for liability on your property. They usually come in $300,000, $500,000, up to $1 million increments, and they're very affordable. I actually just wrote one today for a gal, $1 million general liability, and it's only about $500 a year. And she was ecstatic because she's been self-insuring forever, and she didn't even realize that was out there. So there is liability only, very affordable for all you folks out there that want to self-insure, because it's really hard to self-insure against that lawsuit coming your way. Very, very affordable. So another good news of the day for insurance.
Excellent insurance tip of the day. Thanks, Paula. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. This is Katrina Madewell. We have to take a really quick break, but we'll be back again with our arborist, Tom Hall, with H&H Environment Services. Again, this is Tampa Home Talk on the Real Estate Radio Network. We'll be here every Thursday and Saturday, 5 p.m. If you got any last-minute questions, 727-441-3000. Last chance. Be back in a minute. Hi, I'm Katrina Madewell, host of Tampa Home Talk, right here on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m. Weekly, I'm going to give you market-appropriate, timely information regarding homeownership matters because we want to make your everyday life better. Wherever you are in life, it's our mission to bring you good advice so you can maintain good credit, live within your means, and build wealth. My team and I are passionate about it. Love where you live, or I'll fix it. Tampa Home Talk on WTAN, every Thursday and Saturday at 5 p.m.
My name's Carol Austin, representing the Realtors Care Foundation, GTAR. I'm the CEO there, and the foundation is existing to help with down payment assistance, and we gift up to $5,000 for the first-time home buyers to purchase a home in Hillsborough County. So please visit us at the Realtors Care of GTAR.org or call us at 813-879-7010. 813-879-7010.
Hi, this is Aaron Davis, owner of Hillsborough Title. Hillsborough Title is a local, family-owned title agency here in Tampa Bay. Our service, strength, and knowledge make us different. We've served Tampa Bay area for over 30 years. From Polk County to the Gulf, Pasco to Manatee, Tampa Bay, we've got you covered. Call us at 813-712-8888 or visit us on the web at thebesttitle.com. That's thebesttitle.com.
Welcome back to our show this afternoon. You're listening to Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, on the Real Estate Radio Network. If you missed any part of today's show, you're definitely going to want to check it out in its entirety. And you can find us on the web at tampahometalk.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Tampa Home Talk. And last but not least, you can call us or text us anytime, 24/7 with your questions, 813-377-2775. Again, you can call or text our off-air number, 813-377-2775. So, our next point that we're going to get into is in regards to trees. We'll touch on the little insurance stuff a little bit. And it's interesting that you bring this up because the last house that we lived in, the neighbor, remember we had those back-to-back storms that year? We had a shed way in the back of our property against the fence, and the neighbor's tree actually broke. It fell, and it hit the shed and made this gaping hole in the back of our shed and put a big, there was a hole in there. It dented and crushed the metal. It was bad.
The Florida law is so weird. Is the property line is the divider. If your tree falls across the line and hits your neighbor's, the neighbor's insurance is responsible, which even though you you haven't maintained the tree like you're supposed to. So that's the basic law. But then there's also the portion that is if you knew what you were doing on your side made the tree weak where it fell on your neighbor's, now you are responsible. So it really comes to make sure that when you're pruning trees along the property line, you only have the legal right to go to the property line. So it's always good to go to your neighbor and say, listen, your tree or my tree is impeding on your property. We'd like to prune it properly. Do we have permission to come on your side to make the proper cuts? And the reason why I say proper cuts is because trees don't heal. Hardwood trees do not heal. They don't heal. And what I mean by that is when you wound a tree, forever it just kind of encapsulates it like you would think with a Tupperware bowl where you put food in, you seal the top, and it stays there. But if you come back 2 months later and pop the top, you would see the rot.
It'll be wilty and rotty inside.
Yes, it will. And that's exactly what happens with the tree. It forms the bark over the wound, but it holds the decay in place because cellular walls form around it and kind of holds all your decay. When you make an improper cut on a hardwood tree, the cellular walls don't form and decay goes through the tree, making it weaker. So improper pruning, they call them dog ear cuts, where you see the cut kind of sticks out like a dog's ear. Those types of cuts the tree can't encapsulate, so the decay goes through, making the tree weaker, which could create more problems for in the future, like breaking limbs, falling branches, that type of thing.
So let's talk about tree houses, because that's next on the agenda in our house. And I'm sure I have some listeners and past clients that want to know the same thing. So if your kids are just bugging you, Mommy, Daddy, I want a tree house. Let's talk about that. Like, is there, from an arborist point of view?
We don't like tree houses because you got to put nails into the tree. So we don't really like it from that standpoint. But if you could build it where you didn't have to put the nails in the tree, if you use straps to go around, the branches or the limbs, then it shouldn't be an issue. But when you put a wound in a tree, since it can't heal.
So if there's no nails in the tree, you think about the tree house, and it's got 4 corners, right? Because it's a house. So 2 of those sides are just sitting on the tree, and the other 2 are kind of sticking out from the tree on pedestals. Is that okay?
I guess.
Do we have the arborist blessing?
No, I just don't like holes in trees. But yes, I know some people can do some of the nails, and they try not to do too many wounds. But you don't really want to, like you see the ladders going up the tree where people just put nail at the. That's really bad for the tree. And trees are living organisms that help us recycle the air. So we kind of want to keep them around as long as we can.
There was a kid movie about that, right? Not only the bee one, but there was another one about the trees, wasn't there? I know there was. I can't think what it was.
Probably was, but I can't remember.
Okay, so when I figure that out, I'm going to post it at Tampa Home Talk, TampaHomeTalk.com, also on Facebook and Twitter at Tampa Home Talk.
So, those are one of the things I was looking at. The other is, when you're dealing with your palms, which are not trees, but your palms, we have a lot of great palm trees, your canary dates, as we talked about, your coconut palms. There are some new diseases out there. One is called Texas Phoenix palm decline, and the other is called Fusarium wilt. And basically, both of them are pathogens that just break the cellular walls of the tree or the palm apart, and it doesn't allow it to be able to transfer food up and down the palm like it's supposed to. And then the palm gets weak and dies. So if you're seeing... And
palms, they can add a lot of intrinsic value to your property.
Yes, and especially when you're buying canary dates or coconuts, those palms... a cheap one of those palms is $1,500. So you don't really want to put that palm on your landscape and then not do everything you can to protect it. And there's ways to inoculate them that can help them fight these types of new diseases. Most of the ways that palms get infected is you have bad pruning tools, or somebody comes out to prune your trees and they didn't properly clean the chainsaw that they're going to use to prune it.
So you could definitely carry disease from one tree to another. I didn't think about that.
You can. A bad, we call them the 2 drunks in the truck.
Yeah.
Those guys don't clean their saws. They don't disinfect
I don't think they clean themselves.
Not really. But so what they tend to do is they go to somebody who has a dying or infected tree and they trim it or prune it or cut it down. Then they bring that same saw without being disinfected to your home and prune your beautiful, expensive royals or foxtails. And then, months later they're starting to die and you wonder what happened.
So what are some of the signs that you could, if your palm was starting to get a disease, that something could be caught early and then cleaned?
Well, if you see the palm starting to wilt, they call it the apical meristem. It's really just the center bud. If it starts to lean over,
the middle part,
to brown, yes, then you probably have an issue. If you see mushrooms at the base of the palm or in the trunk of the
mushrooms
palm,
anywhere, fungus,
bad.
bad.
Fungus is bad. And if you see it in a palm, before it can sprout, you need to cut it down and grind it out. Because if you don't, and those spores break out and float around, they travel by air, and you can get what they call buttress root rot, which is really what kills a lot of palms in Florida.
And so what are some of the top 5 palm trees you think that add the most value? Any idea?
Well, yes. Well, your canary dates, your royals, your foxtails, your sylvesters, Those are all coconut palms. Those are all very expensive palms that add a lot of value to your property. Just like a live oak does, or any really nice tree.
I really have enjoyed having you in studio today, Tom. I know we're out of time and we're getting towards the end of the show, but Tom Hall with H&H Environmental Services.
That's correct.
I'm so delighted to have you as our guest today, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, and you have been a wonderful hostess.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And as I said, we don't charge to do evaluations, so if you've got an issue or you think you have an issue with a tree, most tree professionals will come out.
We're going to post Mr. Tom's information on our Facebook page at TampaHometalk.com and across the web. But for this week, we are out.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen.